Hello all. Today I will be giving a short introduction on a very interesting topic, forensic linguistics. Forensic linguistics is actually a part of applied linguistics. You might have heard about this particular topic. We might be knowing about forensic linguistics in different ways, like you might have learned about Sherlock Holmes stories, isn't it? And the way in which Sherlock Holmes identifies a person from the dialect, identifies the place from which he is coming from the dialect that he is using. So this all comes under the purview of forensic linguistics. That means a person is identified from the dialect that he is used. So dialects are specific to different places. So in short, forensic linguistics deals with using linguistic knowledge. Linguistics is actually the scientific study of language. So using the scientific knowledge about language in the field of law, language, crime investigation. So all these come under forensic linguistics. It's actually the application of linguistic knowledge, methods and insights to forensic context of law, language, crime investigation, trial and judicial procedures. If you are looking at the etymology of the word, it comes from the Latin word forensis, which means of or before the forum. So basically we are talking about, it's basically the Roman concept where when a crime happens, the criminals are brought towards in front of a forum where they have to argue about their cause, their crimes, basically a kind of judicial system. So what we need to understand is that when we talk about forensic as such, it's basically connected to the judicial system. I am telling this because forensic is more popular. The word is more synonymous with forensic medicine. But forensic is basically talking about law. And it could be used in the medical context also. So here we are looking at the language aspects in forensics. Okay, that's why we have forensic linguistics. So today I will be talking about the evolution of forensic linguistics. In that I will be talking about two significant cases that happened in UK, United Kingdoms, which was crucial for the evolution of forensic linguistics as an academic discipline. And then I will be talking about the goals and the key elements in forensic linguistics. So let's move on to the term forensic linguistics. This is first used in the academic circle in 1968 by a Swedish linguist, Lars Swartwick. He used it in his text, The Evans Statements, A Case for Forensic Linguistics. He is also the author of the text Investigating Linguistic Acceptability. So we are talking about a very prominent text, The Evans Statements, A Case for Forensic Linguistics. In this particular text, Swartwick, the Swedish linguist, he is trying to talk about what happened over the trial of Mr. Timothy John Evans. He is actually analyzing the statements given by this particular convict to the police and to the judiciary. So let's look at the first case that I was talking about. Timothy John Evans, he is a Welshman who was wrongly accused of the murder of his wife and his infant daughter. It was in 1950, and after 3 years, he was, after the trial, he was given the capital punishment. So this is really significant. The main witness for his trial was one John Christie, who was later found out as the real culprit and a serial killer who actually murdered Evans' wife. And the thing that happened is that after 15 years, Timothy John Evans was given posthumous pardon. He was killed, hanged to death, and after 15 years, he was given posthumous pardon. And the problem was something like, when the Swedish linguist Swartwick, he analyzed the statements given by Timothy Evans to the police officials, he found out that there were a lot of discrepancies. That means when a forensic analysis was made on the statements, he found out anomalies, and this was really alarming. So it was kind of a statement that there is a need of a forensic linguistic analysis of statements like this. If this was made earlier at the time of the trial, this particular person would have been acquitted. So, and this particular issue of Mr. Timothy Evans is considered as a serious miscarriage of justice in United Kingdoms. We have a wrongly accused father and husband hanged to death by the judiciary, and after his death it was proved, it was not revealed, but it was proved that he was not guilty, and he was given posthumous pardon, but to no use because the person is already gone. So this is the first incident that kind of shocked the judicial system of United Kingdom. And let's look at the second incident that we have here, which is of Derek William Bentley. This is one of the most controversial cases that we have in United Kingdom's judiciary. This actually happened again in 1950 when this particular person, Derek Bentley, who was hanged for the murder of a policeman, and this murder happened in the course of a burglary attempt that he made along with his friend Christopher Craig. And what happened is something like Craig and Bentley, they went to the house, and when they were in the house, the police arrived, and there was kind of a situation where Derek and Bentley was cornered by the police officers, and Craig actually pointed a gun towards the police officer. And there was one statement, one phrase, one dialogue said by Bentley that was crucial in his trial. He said, "Let him have it." Actually, he was telling his partner in crime, accomplice, Christopher Craig, that let him have it. So this could have two meanings. Let him have it can mean both, say, let him have the gun literally, or more figuratively, let him have the bullets. That means shoot him. So the prosecution took the figurative meaning, let him have it. That means, Bentley was the person who urged Christopher Craig, who was just 16 years of age at that point of time, to shoot the policeman. And the thing that happened was, Christopher Craig, because he was underage, he was given a less severe punishment, and Bentley was given capital punishment. He was hanged to death at the age of 21. So this was a serious issue, or a very controversial issue that happened in UK. And how is it significant in forensic linguistics? Let's look at it, because we have a very prominent professor of forensic linguistics. I think he is the only professor of forensic linguistics, because we don't have forensic linguistics in many universities. We have it in Cardiff University, UK, and Aston University, UK. So we have a professor of forensic linguistics, Professor Malcolm Coulthard. He is actually an expert witness in forensic linguistics, and was commissioned to prepare reports for both prosecution and defense in over 180 civil and criminal cases in UK. So this particular professor, he analyzed the statements made by Derek Bentley to the police officials. The confession, actually, he was analyzing the confessions made by Derek Bentley to the police officials, and found again discrepancies in the confession. First of all, forensic linguistics is a discipline that is based on the idea of linguistic fingerprint. That means each and every one of us, we speak in a particular way. Our linguistic traits can be analyzed on detailed study, and we could create a linguistic profile of a person. Likewise, you might have heard about idiolect, a personal style of speaking of a person, isn't it? Likewise, when Professor Coulthard analyzed the confession made by Bentley to the police officers, he found out that he had a certain intellect which doesn't match with the one given by the confession, given by the police officers in their confession. So this was a prominent issue. So we have a confession which is supposed to be made by Bentley, and we have lot of other statements made by the same person. When the professor analyzed both these statements and confession, he found that there are certain changes or differences in the style of statements made by the same person. For example, Bentley used I then, the phrase I then, like when he is explaining something, I then moved on to the hall, I then climb over the fence. That's the way in which he usually speak. But in the statements, it was written then I. This is actually small, a very minor thing, but it's really significant because the then I phrase doesn't go in terms with his way of speaking, because Derek Bentley's intellect, he don't speak in a way in which it was written in the confession. So this was a very prominent and significant, say, finding made by Professor Courtyard. And it's kind of been proved that the confession is not actually made by Bentley, but it was fabricated by the police officials, because they have written the confession and made him sign it. So the lack of efficient forensic linguistic analysis in criminal procedures like this, it was kind of accepted by the judiciary at one point of time, because Derek Bentley, who didn't even committed the crime, he was hanged to death just for being the accomplice, telling that he is the person who kind of urged the minor to commit the crime, and he was hanged to death. So this was again, it was really controversial, and he was given posthumous pardon after around 45 years in 1995. And again, for no use, because the person is already dead. So these two incidents was crucial in the judicial system of United Kingdoms, and these two cases played a major role in the abolishing of capital punishment in United Kingdoms that happened in 1996. So that is actually the significance of the two cases in, say, the evolution of forensic linguistics, because these two cases made the public and the judiciary aware of the possibilities of forensic linguistics to be incorporated in the judicial system for a better, functioning of justice. So this is what happened. This is the first part of the lecture where we have the two major incidents that kind of helped for the evolution of forensic linguistics. So what we just discussed was about the justice system in UK. And what about America? Even America, we have the significance of, say, language in the judiciary and, say, the crime and justice system. You might have heard about the Miranda rights. You might have seen that in the movies, the Hollywood movies that we see, where when a police official arrests a person, they will just recite certain lines, which goes something like this: you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before we ask you any questions. So we have statements like this. This is what we call reading up of Miranda rights at the time of arresting a person. And this particular dialogue is so significant that if a police officer forgets, or if you don't recite these particular lines at the time of arrest, that arrest is invalid. Even if he makes an arrest, even if he handcuffs the person, if you are not reciting these particular lines, then the arrest is not legal. So this is part of actually the police training program. They are meant to by heart these particular lines so that they can make an arrest. So this kind of shows the significance of, say, language. They are supposed to say this. So they should be made aware of their rights. And like I already said, the two cases of Timothy Evans and Derek Bentley was really significant, because they should be told about their rights, and they should have the right to use the lawyer, and they should have the right to remain silent, because whatever they say can be used against them. So this is actually the significance of language, and everything is monitored. In the crime and investigation or the justice system, we have all the statements, all the dialogues said by convicts or suspects. They are monitored, they are recorded for the use of forensic linguistic analysis. So that's the way in which we use it. And like I already said about Professor Malcolm Cotillard, he is actually an authority in forensic linguistics now. He is actually the professor of forensic linguistics in Ashton University. Currently, professor emeritus of forensic linguistics in Ashton University. And before that, he worked as a professor of language in University of Birmingham for 37 years. He is actually the foundation president of the International Association of Forensic Linguistics and the founding editor of the Journal on Forensic Linguistics, which is the International Journal of Speech, Language and the Law. So, we have a very accomplished professor in forensic linguistics who actually published two very significant texts on forensic. He actually edited and published two significant texts on forensic linguistics, which is kind of the major source if you are planning to work on, or if you are planning to look on forensic linguistics. You have like two edited volumes by Malcolm Cotillard and Alison Johnson. The title of the book is An Introduction to Forensic Linguistics, Language in Evidence. This is actually published by Routledge in 2010. And then we have the Routledge Handbook of Forensic Linguistics, published by the same Malcolm Cotillard and Alison Johnson. So these two books kind of, the prominent pieces that we have in forensic linguistics, the data, the primary source that we have on forensic linguistics. So let's move on to the application level of forensic linguistics. Like I already said, how and when we can use the service of a forensic linguistics in the current scenario. What is the scope of this particular forensic linguistic field? And again, the goals of forensic linguist. Today, forensic linguistics is commonly divided into two major areas. Obviously, the written area, the written language area, and the spoken language area. Actually, these are the text in forensic linguistics. In written language, for example, the language used in regional, national and international law. So all these text comes under the purview of forensic linguistics. Again, the interviews with witness and suspects, criminal messages used in case of terrorist threat, when we have a kidnapping case or a suicide case, whatever be it, all the messages, they are being decoded by forensic linguistics. Kidnapping, blackmailing, etc. The translation of legal documents from one language to another. The examination of text material to answer questions about who may or who may not have been the author. You are very familiar about plagiarism issues, authorship analysis. We have the issues, who actually authored the text of the plays of Shakespeare. Is it really Shakespeare or Marlowe? So, these kind of, controversies or issues are sorted out by forensic linguistics analysis. The written language examined by a forensic linguist can be in many different forms. It could be phone messages, it could be notes, it could be handwritten letters, and even postcard writing. Whatever be it, even the writing in social media can come under the purview of forensic linguistics. This is actually talking about the written language part, and even the spoken language format, the language used by interpreters during official interviews, it comes under the purview of forensic linguistics. When we talk about interviews with suspects, witnesses, victims, the language used by offenders or victims during a crime, the focus of this area is not simply what is said, it's basically how it is said. That's why we have certain key areas in forensic linguistics like forensic stylometry, forensic dialectology. So all these areas are being covered under. So it's not just about what is said, it's about how it is said. That's why I said the linguistic fingerprint is significant. For example, two people, they might be describing the same thing in two different ways. When I say two different ways, using two different set of language, or the number of words, keywords used by the same different person to explain the same thing can be different. So we are talking about the usage of language. If we are carefully analyzing the language, that means I am talking about the word count, the keyword ratio. There are a lot of aspects. We could create a profile, a linguistic profile of a person and analyzed. So these all come under forensic linguistics. And let's look at different areas, the key elements in forensic linguistics. One is actually author identification. You might be knowing, I already said about this. The author of a particular text. We can actually analyze other text made by or written by the same person, and we can create a linguistic profile, and we can kind of evaluate whether is this the same person who wrote a particular text, because we have problems like this, say cases like this even in the current scenario. Even the issue of plagiarism come under this. So all these things could be analyzed based on, say, the author identification category in forensic linguistics. And we have something like forensic stylistics. The discipline subjects written or spoken materials, or even both, to scientific analysis for determination and measurement of a content, the meaning, speaker identification, determination of authorship, identifying plagiarism. These are kind of overlapping, but these are like two different areas where, say, authors are being identified, or if there is a case regarding a dispute regarding the authorship of a particular text. Even we had an example with Helen Keller. One of her texts, Frozen Giant, has been, say, under scrutiny for plagiarism, and after the forensic analysis it was proven that it was kind of plagiarized. We can say that we can actually kind of give an excuse that this particular text, the writer is influenced by other people. But if we are we are not talking about influence as such, we are talking about evidence. Evidence from which we can identify whether this person kind of, say, plagiarize another writer. So this is actually a common area in literature, where there are disputes regarding, say, the authenticity of the text, or the plagiarism, or the copying, unlawful copying of text from another person. Even this is really significant in research areas in English language and literature. So if you are looking at, say, authorship measures, we can see that they use different techniques like word length average, average number of syllables per word, article frequency. Article frequency is really significant. Like I already said, if you are explaining the same incident, place, person, two people, they might be using a different, say, frequency of articles in their speech or written format. So this is again type token ratio, punctuation, both again syntactic and overall density, and the measurement of hapax legomena. This is actually the unique words in a text. Hapax legomena is actually the analysis of unique words in a text. Okay, if you are looking at, say, my linguistic profile, I might be using certain words repeatedly. So there will be some unique words in my vocabulary which will be kind of different from others, isn't it? So we can make a linguistic profile based on this. So that's why it's again important, we are not looking at investigation as such, we are looking for clarification. So when we talk about forensic linguistics, this is not directly used in, say, investigation of a crime. We use it for the clarification. If the justice system, the judiciary can ask for, say, clarification. If there is a suicide and if there is a suicide note, there should be a proper investigation on the suicide, and for clarification of the authenticity of the suicide note, the judiciary can ask the help of, say, handwriting expert or the forensic linguistic expert. So this is actually kind of a clarification methodology adopted by the judiciary system. Okay, the next element in forensic linguistics is linguistic dialectology. This is what, like I already said about Sherlock Holmes, the way in which he understands, say, the nationality or the locality of a person is through the dialect. This refers to the study of dialects in a methodological manner based on anthropological information. It is becoming more important to conduct systematic studies of dialects, especially within the English language. We have a number of dialects of the same language, not only in English but also in Malayalam. In our case, we can say a person from Thrissur, from his dialect, isn't it? That's basically dialectology, a minor form of dialectology. The way in which people speak in different localities, regionalities are different. And if you are making a study on the dialects of a particular language, we can identify the locality of a person from the way in which he speaks, not just the words that he uses, but the way in which he speaks. That's why I said it's not just about what a person is saying, but how it is said. And the next important part is forensic phonetics. The forensic phonetician deals with the production of accurate transcription of what was being said. So it's not just about writing down or reporting what is being said. It's about accurate phonetic transcription of what is being said, because the analysis, like we already discussed earlier, the cases of Derek Bentley and Evans, they actually made a transcription of what is being said, and they analyzed and find out, say, the linguistic profile of both these convicts. So this particular part is really significant, and it is very meticulously done, because all the dialogues are being recorded, and they transcribe it into a different script, and this is being analyzed methodically. Transcription can reveal information about a speaker's social and religious background, even regional background. Forensic phonetics can determine similarities between the speakers of two or more separate recordings. And again, the two main types of transcriptions are written documents and video and audio records. Accurate, reliable text transcription is important because the text is the data which becomes the available evidence. So this particular part is really a key element in police investigations. And let's move on to the goals of forensic linguistics. It's basically to provide a careful and systematic analysis of language. And like I already said, we had two grave examples on the serious miscarriage of justice. So the idea is to help the judiciary or the judicial system in a more effective and foolproof analysis, or foolproof analysis of, say, evidences given to them. So it's not basically investigation, but clarification of the findings of the investigation. Again, it could be used by, the police officers can use this evidence not only to interview witness or suspect, but more effectively, but also to solve crimes more reliably. Lawyers, judges and jury members can use this analysis to help evaluate questions of guilt and innocence more fairly. Again, translators and interpreters can use this research to communicate with greater accuracy. Forensic linguistics serves justice and helps people to find the truth when a crime has been committed. So towards the conclusion, how or why is this significant in research nowadays? Because mainly, or more significantly, we are now supporting or promoting interdisciplinarity, and this is one of the main things that we could put forward. Forensic linguistics is one of the fastest growing fields within applied linguistics. Its relevance for law and justice practices makes it a very important and interesting area of science. The diversity of disciplines and the possibilities for research, as well as its relations to allied disciplines such as sociolinguistics, psychology, pragmatics, sociology and law, draw attention and establish its popularity among young scholars and practitioners even more. So that's all with the lecture. Thank you.